a group of people that were roughly around about the same age, way back in about 1980, 79, 80, decided to form a cooperative called the Keys Music Association and to put on our own concerts. The reason for this was because there seemed to be very few venues that were particularly interested in the sort of jazz that we were interested in, which was very derivative of black American 1960s modern jazz. A fairly militant form of music and a fairly, at times, very strident and hard to listen to. I mean, we very much liked music of like John Coltrane and Archie Shepp and that scene. And we found it very difficult to perform at places that perhaps were more interested in the more straighter or commercial aspect of jazz.
The KMA was an organisation that really came along and had an influence at a time when people like myself were mainly playing bebop and swing, and most of the bands around town were really into those forms of music. And they came along with something different and sort of made everyone do a double take and say, hang on, what's this all about? And they really did have that effect on most of us. I know for myself, the first time I heard them, I thought, they're breaking all the rules. And this was an exciting thing because they obviously were breaking them for a reason.
Well, I think we sometimes sort of compared ourselves to the AACM and the Art Ensemble of Chicago in that we felt, you know, we were a cooperative group banding together, you know, to sort of all try and help each other as musicians to apply for funding and to put on concerts together and to create a community that could exist independently of the mainstream of jazz as it existed in Australia at that time. And so I think there were definitely overseas models that gave us inspiration.
We were trying to open up the doors to all sorts of different types of music. We felt that we'd grown up at a time when rock music was the dominant force in popular culture anyway, the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all sorts of people like that. At the same time, we'd been listening to John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders, Ornette Coleman, John McLaughlin, contemporary forces in the jazz field. Politically as well, the things that go with that rock culture, the drugs, marijuana, LSD, and the spiritual movement that went with it, which was originally also a strong part of John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders' music, was also a strong part of our music. The trying to get away from music being a commodity that's sold. We felt that music had been corrupted by money and by the modern capitalist system as such. We're almost Marxist in our philosophy, but without having any real intellectual idea of what Marxism was. It was very much a street philosophy. we were coming up against an attitude that people were saying it's not jazz unless it's basically confined to a very narrow field of swing, basically from the 1950s. And even contemporary jazz they were looking down on and saying wasn't jazz. So we started, we felt that if we'd been influenced in our lifetime by rock music, and by Indian music, African music, whatever roots were in the music that we were listening to, they should be allowed to naturally come out when we play.